R129 SL320. The Mercedes-Benz R129 began production in 1989 all the way through to 2001. Throughout the production line, there were a variety of different engine options for the R129, including straight 6, V6, V8 and V12, but in today's video, we're going to focus on the M104 3.2 litre straight 6 engine. If you'd like to learn more about the R129 and all of its history, all the way from designing, building and the legacy it left, then please watch my first video on the 500 SL where I go more in depth. But in today's video, I want to mainly focus on the 320. From 1995 onwards, the R129s received a facelift that was both mechanical and visual upgrades. Mechanically, the cars gained a 5-speed electronic valve transmission over the original 4-speed hydraulic gearbox, and this was a major step up. Visually, they changed from 3 slats on the side to 2 slats on the sides, and the bumpers were slightly more rounded out and the lights were changed as well, as long as many other small changes including the grills. The 320 we're focusing on today was spec'd in azurite blue with a mushroom interior, and it has later been added a panoramic hardtop, which was an optional extra from the factory for £15,000. Under the hood lies a straight 6 with the engine code M104. It has 24 valves, variable valve timing, and produces 228 brake horsepower and 315 Newton meters of torque. Just like all R129s, this SL320 has an electro-hydraulic fabric convertible roof, and all you had to do was hold the button and it would do the whole operation by itself, which was a first of its kind in the 90s. It was built in the golden era of Mercedes, when all they cared about was building the best cars possible, and they were built like tanks and made to last. And that's why we're going to take this SL320 for a drive, so you can learn all about what it's really like when you're behind the wheel. And it just goes to show that Mercedes-Benz built cars incredibly well, and Bruno Sacco's design, even to this day, still provides the R129 with an incredible presence on the road. So we're now behind the wheel of the R129 SL320, and driving it you can really feel that classic over-engineered Mercedes build quality. I mean, this particular example has 141,579 miles as we speak, and you really wouldn't know. The transmission still changes effortlessly smoothly. The engine is quiet and smooth. There's hardly any rattles. You can hear the tiniest bit of wind noise through some of the seals as the rubbers get old, but really it's an incredibly comfortable and easy place to be. It's the perfect grand tourer. You can sit along. I'm tickling the engine right now. We're only at 40 miles an hour and I'm at 1500 RPM. It's not even trying. It really is effortless. The way Mercedes built these cars really has stand the testament of time. You know, this car was built in 1997 and it's still on the roads today, passing MOTs, not rusting away and being enjoyed for what it was meant to be. So let's talk about that transmission. Well, this is a 5-speed gearbox. The original earlier cars had 4-speed hydraulics. This is an electronic valve 5-speed, and it is super smooth. You don't feel the changes, but it also has that sportier side to it. You have an option to put it in sport, but even when it's in W, it still has really nice response. It's smooth changes, but when you put your foot down, it can downshift really fast and get going. And even though this is the 320, so it's one of the smaller engines, because it has that more responsive gearbox mated to it, it means that the engine can give that power straight away. You're not waiting for gearbox to change down really slowly. Yes, it's not going to be like a modern gearbox. There's no way. It was built in the 90s. But because you've got that 5-speed, it really makes the 320 feel very alive. It kicks down when you want it to. It's like it reads your mind. I mean, what's interesting about this gearbox is it learns. So if you're going on a spirited drive and it's learning the way you're driving it, even when you let off, it will then keep in that gear. So sometimes it'll be holding at 4,000 revs because it knows you want to keep going again, because it's learned what the driving you've been doing for the last 10 minutes. It's expecting you to give it power again. So that's why it will hold the gears. So it's a really clever gearbox. And how's the steering? Well, it's an old Merc. You don't get much feel, but it's super easy to drive. Hardly any input, no vibration to the steering wheel. It's so smooth and easy. It's such an incredible grand tourer. And let's talk about the engine. Well, we have a 3.2 litre straight six engine with 24 valves and variable valve timing. And what that means is it can cruise like this, or if you put your foot down, it can do this. So kick down. And that's really what's so awesome about this car. We've just cruised along, and then you put your foot down, and within an instant, you're flying. It has that incredible torque from that straight six engine that's always ready to go. And with that 5-speed, you see it kicks down pretty fast for a car from the 90s, and then it's off. With that variable valve timing, once it crosses around 4,500 RPM, it really comes on strong. And I've done driving with other 500s and 600s, and they're all so different. But what I love about the 320 is because the 6-cylinder cars had a different diff in the back, and what that means is the ratios allow the engine to wrap up faster, and what that basically in turns means when you put your foot down, it can jump off the line that little bit faster. Yes, it's never going to win against a 500 or a 600 on an autobahn race, but that's not what it's made for, and in the UK we don't have that anyway. So it really is, oh here you go, 124 going by. It really is such an amazing car, and Mercedes really knocked it out the park. Let's talk about comfort. These seats are amazing. Yes, they're not the sportiest seats in the world, but they weren't meant to be. They're fully electric, fully adjustable, super smooth. Again, with 141,000 miles, the seats haven't lost all their cushion. They've lost a little bit, but they're still really comfortable. You could sit in this car for hours and hours, driving to Wales, driving to Scotland, taking a trip to Europe. It's such amazing grand tourer, and this is what this car was meant to be. And now this car in particular has a panoramic roof on, which was a £15,000 optional extra in the 90s. So that goes to show you needed some serious money to buy these cars back then. But even today, these roofs are fetching around 2.5 to 3 grand, and it really does transform the car. It gives you that convertible feel without having to have the roof off. And somewhere in the UK, you don't always get sun all the time, as we all know. So by having this roof, when you do want the comfort and the warmth and the quietness of having a hardtop on, you can still get that convertible feeling, which I think is really nice from Mercedes, and it's something that the facelift cars got, and the pre-facelift never had that option. This particular example has rear seats in the back. Yes, you don't want to take 4 adults, but if someone wants to jump in, take them to the train station for 10 minutes, it's more than enough. It's very useful to have those rear seats. Not all the cars had them because they were an optional extra, but I think this car having them is really useful. It may be from the 90s, but it still has a lot of creature comforts. We still have air conditioning, a radio, electric windows, electric seats. It's such an easy car to drive, and even an electric windscreen wiper for the 90s was a pretty crazy upgrade. The pre-facelifts didn't have a sensor, so this car, you just leave it in mode 1, and if it senses the rain, the windscreen comes on. Super easy. It's one of those cars you can just sit in and enjoy the drive. You don't have to work it really hard. What it's best at is cruising along like this. It's in a nice high gear, RPMs are low, super smooth suspension, rolling over all the bumps. It's so easy, but it also has that sporty side, which really rewards you. The harder you push it, the higher the RPMs go. The noise these cars make are just phenomenal. The 320 really is a good option if you don't want a V8 or a V12. Obviously, the V8 and the V12 are incredible engines, but you might not want that. What I mean by this is, if you want to use this car as a daily driver, you really don't want to be putting in fuel every couple of days in a V8 or a V12 because they're substantially more thirsty. This car on a motorway cruise down to the coast, if you're not going too crazy, can return impressive MPG around 30 to 35, and that really makes it a viable option as a daily driver. Now we're getting to some twisty roads. It's when the 320 comes into its own. It's not an autobahn cruiser, it's a country lane basher, and with that different diff, lighter engine at the front, you really can have some good fun. Now with this gearbox, you can manually lock it into a gear. So what I'm going to do is lock it into second gear. You can feel the car's downshifting. Now we have much better engine response. We're coming to a twisty corner here. Just turn in, not too much body roll, and then you've got that power to come straight back out, and it makes such a glorious noise. Down back into second, downshifts nicely. Not the fastest gearbox in the world, but it does a good job. And you've got that instant torque to come back out of the corner, and it just makes such a good noise. So what's my final thoughts? Well, the reality is the 320 is never going to be as fast as a 500 or a V12 on the motorway. But if you're someone that wants a daily driver, but you also enjoy coming out onto the country lanes, blasting between 40 to 60, it really is in its element. It's such an amazing engine, it's so smooth, it's so effortless, and it just gives you that power when you need it, when you want it, with that 5-speed transmission. I haven't yet driven a 320 with a 4-speed, I'd be interested to try that, but in my opinion, the 320 with a 5-speed is a great car.